Greetings. You're tapped into Lofty Beginnings, starting in real estate. The podcast dedicated to sharing my journey on becoming a realtor mogul from the ground up. Thanks for joining me as I navigate through the peaks and valleys of the real estate industry, giving you the tools, tips, and time to aid you on achieving your dreams in real estate as I achieve mine. No one lives by choice. Everyone, everything has a purpose, a part to play, and the grand design that is creation by Sister Stan. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I actually heard that particular, while researching the content, of course, heard that particular quote, I don't know, it kind of gave me goosebumps in my skin. And I know I always say that like throughout the podcasts, but I particularly, when I do the research with the content, I'm very intentional what I look for. And that quote just kind of stuck out to me. So listeners, I have a very special treat for you guys today. I know the prior episodes, we've been focusing on developing the mindset, our journey, of course, developing the mindset of becoming a realtor through just some of the personal experiences. I wanted to gear more towards some of the more practical things. So I have a really special guest here today. My dedicated listeners, you've definitely heard me speak about her before, very highly, and I'm so excited that she's here today. So I want to introduce today this intelligent, vetted, beautiful, very well-informed queen today, Susan O'Hara. Let's give a round of applause. Hi, Susan. So it's great to have you here today. I just want to, and you gotta excuse me, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but it'll settle out over the wine and cheese. So I just want to first start off by thanking you for the time and the consideration to step on the Lofty Beginnings, and blessing us with your presence today. I have so much intentional wise to discuss today. I'll kind of keep it brief because I know you have a kind of a busy schedule, but I'll be brief as possible. And again, thank you. So I kind of first want to just kind of jump into it. I'm not going to just shoot questions right away, but just to kind of set the expectations and the standard of what's going to happen today. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over how we met. I remember it was actually June 13th. I'll never forget.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll never forget. It was June 13th. I believe it was last year. Yeah, June 13th of last year, you guys had an actual cookout event there in regards to the promotion of the mortgage company as well as the one group.
The Realty One Group Focus.
Oh, okay. And we came across that. I came in there scared, guys, when I met Susan. Before I even met anybody, I didn't know anybody there, to be completely honest with you. And Susan was one of the first people. She was actually the first person I walked into there when I came into there. It was very warm, welcome presence, and just tons of knowledge. So one of the things that stuck out to me most about her today, listeners, that I said to her, we had just small talk, and I was just bombarding her with questions, like you'll see later on today as we get through the episode. I was bombarding her with questions. I said, essentially, one of the key things that I said is, essentially, of course, I was asking her why she, got into the career field, which will lead into why we're bringing her on the segment today. And she said to me that, essentially, there wasn't much people of us, like, and of melanin there in that particular career field, and she wanted to make a change. And that definitely was a mental note in my head. It resonated with me on so much levels. Because us as a collective, I'm not going to get too deep on that. That is absolutely true from my opinion, just coming and seeing up. I don't know how many of you guys can agree with that. But so when I came across Susan, and we first were introduced and met after, the bombarding of questions, and I dug so deep into the questions, she highly impressed me because she was able to answer them all, so gracefully, and give me a sense of direction as far as the real estate industry goes, as well as her particular, what she does for a profession, and we'll get into that later. Okay, so we're going to discuss essentially what her profession is. And I just kind of wanted to set the tone why I asked her to come on to the show today. And again, my dedicated listeners, I intentionally said this was going to happen, and we have it here today. So let's give another good round of applause while the queen takes the floor. Okay, so for starters there, Miss O'Hara, Susan, which one did you prefer?
Susan is fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Susan. So I know this is kind of ironic. Can you just briefly introduce yourself, your title, and explain exactly what it is that you do in this whole real estate process?
Okay, so my name is Susan O'Hara. I'm a loan officer with Cross Country Mortgage. As a loan officer, my main job is to make sure that all of my clients are educated in the loan process, that they are able to get pre-approved for something they can afford, that we help them out with different grants and down payment assistance, and really pretty much just help guide them from the beginning of the process all the way to closing.
Oh, wow, that is amazing. And
Yeah.
it's not too often that someone, such as myself, and probably some of my listeners here today, if you can relate, just thumbs up. Some of my listeners here come across a key player as far as when it involves the real estate industry.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hear typically, and this is just me speaking hypothetically there, when especially from my perspective, when you hear of the actual real estate industry, it's usually the key players usually introduced on the front main scene is usually the realtors. The realtors, we know that there's the loan officers there because it wouldn't happen, which is the highlight of the point I'm trying to make today. Loan officers, but I feel that we tend to zone in on the realtors, but essentially, in my honest opinion, I feel as if the loan officers are the backbone of this whole real estate process, rather from its first-time home buyer or the actual realtor just getting started. What would you say about that?
I would definitely say, anyone who, because of course you can buy real estate with cash, right? But a lot of people can't, and a lot of people do rely on financing. So if that's the case, you're going to need to bump into a loan officer at some point in order to buy that home. So yeah, I would say that we play a very pivotal part of the process.
Absolutely. And when you say financing, just for the audience of those who tend not to know exactly what that means, could you specify that for me?
So the mortgage on the property, right? Because if you're purchasing a property for $200,000, if you do not have cash, if you don't have $200,000 in cash, you can't purchase that property. So you have to get a loan from a bank or credit union or retail lender. So I work with a retail lender, and we will process the loan for you for a small down payment.
Okay. Okay, so that seems like a pretty smooth process there. And what's so strange about it there, and before I kind of jump into the other question, what's so strange about it, and there's polls to actually prove this that I've taken for this particular audience of the podcast. Most people tend, when it comes across, are intimidated by that particular home buying process because small things as such, financing, they don't truly understand the depths of it. And just like how you broke it down very briefly as far as the retail lenders and the difference between banks and things of that nature, you have your typical person thinking of buying a particular wanting or desiring to buy a house, but feel they are unable to do so because things like credit come into play. And I'm not going to delve too deep into that yet because that's one of the questions coming up. I just kind of wanted to touch bases on that. I find that real interesting, and I appreciate you for sharing that brief knowledge because my listeners there taking that in.
Mhm.
So keyword financing, she did define that, guys. I hope you guys have pen and paper down because you want to take as much notes as possible. Very informative there. So my next question there, Susan. Now, in regards to, you said you're a loan officer. That was your particular title.
Yes.
How does your role actually, what inspired you to become a loan officer, and how does your role play a part in the success of a home buyer as well as a realtor?
Okay. So I started off as a realtor actually. And it was like one particular transaction that I was working on, and my client had a very terrible loan officer. And it took, I want to say it was about 4 months for us to get from contract to close, right? And in a typical loan process, contract to close is really around 30 days, 30 to 45 days. So if you can imagine it now taking 4 months, we're talking about, extension after extension. The seller could at some point have said, you know what, I'm just going to go find another buyer. But I felt like it was just like a lack of care. Of course, it was a lower loan price, African American. And for me, it was just like, I was looking around in the industry. It's a lot of, white male loan officers. It's not a lot of female loan officers, and it's definitely way less Black female loan officers. And I felt like that was something that I wanted to do personally, because I still wanted to be in the real estate field, but I wanted to help people in a different way. And I knew that with my other experience from before, because I worked with the government before, and dealing with guidelines and processing, making sure that people were eligible for funds. I work with welfare. It was a very similar type of work, okay, right? With making sure that you're staying on top of guidelines, because as a loan officer, I need to know the guidelines, because the underwriter is who approves the loan, and the underwriter is following guidelines. If I'm not following the guidelines, then I'm setting my client up for failure, right?
Absolutely.
So that was pretty much my inspiration. And what was the second part of the question?
So the second part was, how does your role play a part of success for not only the first-time home buyer, but the actual realtor as well?
Well, I mean, all of that. I'm going to make sure you get to the closing table, right?
Did you hear that?
You know what I'm saying?
Did
I'm
you
making
hear
sure
that?
that you get to the closing table. So if I get you pre-approved, I know that I've already looked through all your documentation, make sure that things line up, make sure your debt to income ratio is good, your credit is good, like everything aligns so that you are going to get to a closing table. And as a realtor, you have to work with a partner, a lending partner, who's going to do those things, who's going to make sure that your buyer is legit, your buyer meets all the checkpoints, so that you do get to the closing table, because that's their goal too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And guys, again, important taking notes, especially my future realtors. Key player here. Kind of feel like it's very underrated when you, not underrated per se, that's a wrong choice of words, but it can be that particular career field, as far as a loan officer, can be quite overlooked, or more than the shadow aspect, when they're a key component in the whole process there, rather that's from a first-time home buyer's perspective or an actual realtor. Now, you did say in regards to, it was one question that I had, it'll come back to me. So you answered the first question. I didn't know, and this was new news. I guess that's one question that I did miss. I never knew you started off as a real estate agent.
I did.
That, like, okay, so that gives me goosebumps again, because there's that level of understanding. She can see it in a multi-dimension and different perspectives, because she just came from the realtor position. Could you just briefly tell me what that was like?
I enjoy being a realtor, but I really, really enjoy being a loan officer. I don't know, like, I just felt like it was more my speed, I like to educate. I like to, help people qualify. And I feel like because the loan officer plays such a pivotal role in the process, like, I wanted to be over there. Okay. Because the realtor is like, yeah, you're helping guide them through, you're making sure they find a house that they like, you're setting them up with inspections, appraisals, all of that, they're wonderful guides throughout the process, but the process does not happen if you don't get a loan approved.
I agree, and we're definitely going to get into that, and I definitely agree with that. I'm glad you brought that up. Now, that is very interesting. So you were a realtor. Another thing that stuck out for me is when you said essentially we tend to see many people of melanin or of our descent African American in that particular career field. I totally agree with that. You usually see, and this is with all due respect, no prejudices to anyone, but just speaking complete transparent, because we do that here in Lofty Beginnings. Full transparency. You typically usually see that career in a European older conservative or aka white male or even older white woman. So to sit here and see a loan officer, someone that looks like me and as well can relate to me on so many different aspects, makes me smile deep within. And it should feel the same way as you guys too. Feel the same way for you guys too. I'm gonna continue to move on. I don't want to take up too much time. Now, Susan, can you explain to me the difference between working with the loan officer versus directly with the bank for financing?
Well, the bank also has loan officers.
Okay.
So I think it's more so just the type of lender that you pick, but we're all loan officers, whether you go through a bank or credit union or a retail lender or even a mortgage broker, right? So it's just different. It's the same products for the most part, to be honest, but you might get a different experience, right? Where I would say that a loan officer that works for a retail lender and a mortgage broker, you're going to have more of an individual experience, right? Okay. You're going to have someone who you can probably text or you can call on the weekend. So I feel like that's someone that most first-time home buyers will feel more comfortable with in the process.
Absolutely. That's what I would call, just coming from the customer service industry and background, Journey Solutions Inc. Coming from the customer service background, I would call it what's called that wow experience, where you can have that one-on-one time with that person. And essentially, because, people tend, no matter what aspect it's in, even though we're kind of zoning in on that real estate process, people tend to have questions, and just having that person or that point of contact in general to reach out when questions or anxiety is involved is a plus. It's a thumbs up. So I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the questions, and I do thank you listeners for tuning in with me today. And I appreciate the patience. And again, Susan, we do appreciate having you here. Yeah. So my next question, now for someone buying their first home, what are the first steps that a first-time home buyer should take before applying for a loan?
I would say just make sure that they understand the basics of what they need in order to qualify. Like you're primarily going to need 2-year employment history. You're going to need some amount of savings if you're not like dipping into a 401k. I say a minimum of like $5,000 at least, because you're going to need that money to put towards earnest money deposit, your inspections, your appraisal, things that you're going to pay for up front, right?
Okay.
You will also need to have decent credit. That's very important. Although you can qualify, because we have a lot of programs that you can qualify for with a lower credit score, but you're going to pay for that, right? Yep. You're going to have a higher interest rate. You're going to have a higher down payment. So really just getting your credit in order. I say for most people, 620 and above is ideal.
Oh, okay, great. And I'm glad you brought up credit scores. I'm going to kind of retrospect a little bit and get off topic and then jump back on. Coming up in the world that I came in, or the reality per se, a lot of the older figures there that I came around, I came from a pretty tough background, a lot of low income involved. And I've been around people who've essentially, wanted to purchase a home and, make it out the what they say, quote unquote, hood and
Mhm.
things of that nature. And a lot of times from what I've seen firsthand experience, as well as hearing them from secondhand experiences, that they always came across that obstacle or roadblock of credit always serving as some type of obstacle.
Mhm.
But from my very own ears, as well as you guys listeners too, I'm quite sure you just heard that is not an issue. Even though you definitely want to tend to have good credit because that's going to determine the interest rate. And I heard that, but that is not an issue, correct?
I'm not gonna say it's not an issue. I wouldn't say that. People need to get their credit right? So I don't want to downplay credit. Like, people can qualify with lower credit scores.
Okay.
Like, for example, our FHA loans, right? We can go all the way down to 500, but you have to put 10% down. You're probably not going to pass something that we call automated underwriting, which just adds more money to the transaction. So my recommendation is for everyone is to get your credit in order. Like, if you have a ton of collections on there, that's going to factor into your debt to income ratio. So ideally, get your credit in order before you apply. But if you don't, we also help with, directing people to credit repair as well.
Okay, now that is my key component that I wanted to point out, and that was what I was getting to.
Mm-hmm.
So most time, and then, growing up, and again, I'm a native, listeners know, from Brooklyn, New York, East New York section there, big shout outs there. East New York section in particular, we grew up around financial institutions like Chase, Wells Fargo was another big one, Citibank, things like that. And I remember a lot of times my aunts or my mom or just, the older queens that played a part in my life, a lot of times when they went to these places and things of that nature, and it was typically always the conservative Jewish or white males, things of that nature, who were involved in those type of financial institutions, will feel initially, and one time I actually literally heard it with my own ears, initially that credit aspect did come into play. And I did hear what you say, that is a huge part of everything in this, that, and that nature. But you also threw in that other aspect on the silver lining part where you still have that chance. There are other options, things such as credit repair. That isn't highlighted much, and I think that is big and major. So you can say, it's safe to say, when your potential customer or your potential client per se, at that point would typically be a customer, but potential client at that, you're safe to say if they don't have the major components as far as credit goes, you're able to walk them through that process or refer them there where they can find a good credit repair. Is that correct? That's amazing, guys. You definitely want to take notes there. So I'm going to get to the other question because we on a time crunch there. Now, I heard you earlier say, you mentioned a pre-approval, and that stuck out to me like a sore thumb. So I definitely took mental note of that.
Okay.
Now, what is a pre-approval, and why is it so important in the home buying process?
So pre-approval is basically a document or a process that tells you what you potentially could qualify for, right? Because you don't get approved for a loan till you're already under contract. It goes through the full underwriting process, right? So that's when you get your final approval. But the pre-approval is pretty much, okay, I'm looking at all your information. I'm looking at our guidelines. I'm saying this is what you're likely to get approved for once you go through underwriting.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that gives you the amount that you can go out and shop with. Because if you don't have a pre-approval, you're just shopping blind, right? You going out here looking at $300,000 houses, but you only qualify really for 200. So it's a waste of time. Most realtors are not going to take out clients without a pre-approval. So that's very important that you get that before you start the process.
Can you hear that, guys? Future home buyers and realtors, pre-approval process, very important. Key thing to get to set intentions on getting that process started of that home buying journey. Do not forget that. Now, I heard you say underwriter. This is the second or maybe third time I've heard you said it. Just very briefly, could you explain to my listeners what that even means?
First of all, the underwriter, way more important than the loan officer.
Okay.
because the underwriter is going to be the person who actually approves the loan. They are the final say so.
Okay.
So that's why, as a loan officer, you need to be up to date with the guidelines and know what the underwriter is going to look for. Because, we package it up, we pre-approve them. Once they find a house, we set the file up nice and ready for the underwriter. But the underwriter is the one who makes the final decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's safe to say you work pretty closely with the underwriter during this whole process.
I wouldn't say we work closely. They work, for our company, but it's separate duties. And, our job is to make sure that we collect documents and things like that to provide to the underwriter. But really, we don't work
hand in hand.
Not hand
Okay,
in hand.
so is that where those guidelines come into play? And why you stated you were so stern on those?
We have to.
Those. Okay.
Yeah, there's there's not a lot of wiggle room with some of the guidelines. Because it's not us that makes that final decision, and the underwriter is black and white. What does the guideline say? So yeah.
Okay. And I think that's deep. Now, guys, just to highlight out of this, I kind of wanted to point out something because it just stuck to me. I'm gonna jump off topic a little bit and jump back on, so just bear with me because my mind all over the place. But she stated, you see how all of this can come into play from her essentially recognizing a small problem, essentially her starting off as a realtor, to becoming a loan officer, because during a particular transaction as a realtor, one of the clients she had a horrible experience with the particular loan officer, and she found a key component to where she can make a difference and play a part into that. I just kind of want to highlight that today, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the quote I read earlier. So getting back on topic, I'm going to go to the next question. Now, you mentioned earlier about I heard you say FHA loan. I wanted to know if you can go over some common type of loans like FHA, VA loans, conventional loans, or any type of, also importantly, any type as far as the organization or company you're with, in-house resources that your companies offer to our listeners out there today.
Well, I'll start with the fact that Cross Country Mortgage pretty much has any type of loan program you can think of, whereas some banks and credit unions might be very limited with what they offer. We have endless amount of products, right? So there's the traditional loan products like FHA, conventional, VA, USDA. FHA, VA, and USDA are all like government-backed loans. Conventional is just regular conforming loan. And then we also have non-traditional loans. So people who don't fit into a certain bracket, we have investor loan products. We have like bank statement loan products, like things that people can qualify for without regular income.
Okay.
Right. So those are some of the things that we offer as well.
Okay, that's great. So there's tons of loans, as well as just resources out there for that first-time home buyer that's essentially worried about, funds, having a particular funds. Is that correct?
So we do also offer down payment assistance. We have our own in-house, as well as we partner with state PHFA, Philly First for some of the whoever wants to purchase in the city. So there's a lot of different options to help people out with the cost.
Okay, and I can imagine when you're dealing with a particular client, it's a case-by-case scenario, so you determine what their needs are, and you're able to dig in your handy-dandy tool bag there and kind of see what fits and suits all.
Exactly.
Okay, so you hear that, listeners, today? You have the perfect loan officer here with us today, and we'll get to the contact information. We're coming up to that, guys, but she'll definitely get you in that home. Realtors as well walk you through that process of just starting out. So my next question there, I want to know a little bit more about you, Susan.
About me?
Yeah, just a little bit. Now, how did you aid the first-time home buyer in overcoming challenges? And I asked this earlier, but I kind of want to zone in on this again, like low credit scores or even limited down payments. And I know you mentioned credit repair is one of them. Could you kind of like briefly go over that again, just to kind of segment it out? Because we did talk about that earlier.
Yeah, pretty much. Like if someone comes to me, they have poor credit. I go over the accounts that are on their credit report, because a lot of times people are not even aware of some of the things that are on their credit. I give them the basics, like as far as one, you need to make sure that, you know, moving forward, even if you're going to go through credit repair, that you're going to be making your payments on time, that you're bringing down your accounts to at least under 30% utilization. Trying to get rid of some of the negative items, like if they have charge-offs, collections, things like that. Credit repair is good with that because they send out all the dispute letters and things like that that most people are not going to follow up with on their own. As far as down payment assistance, it's really going to depend on that person's circumstance, right? So as long as they meet certain criteria, whatever the criteria is for the grant, because every grant has their own criteria, and you know, I have to make sure that they meet the criteria. If they don't, then we have to go through a different method, right? You have to save some funds, right? And sometimes even when you get a grant, you still have to save some funds. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people aren't really aware of or ready for, is just like that budgeting conversation and figuring out ways how they can contribute to the purchase of the property. Because I mean, you think about it, if you're going to go rent, right, you're going to be putting 3 times the rent: first, last, security. If you're going to do that to rent, you need to do that to buy too. If you can get first, last, and security, at least you have a starting point for your mortgage. But a lot of times I get people who have $200 in the bank and they think that they can purchase a home, and it's like, you have to save a little bit more.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's a conversation that I have too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree with that. I agree. So it's pretty straight setting forward there, listeners. You guys, and this is for all my renters currently. I'm currently one. Paying first, last, months in deposit. You interested in purchasing a home, same thing applies. You know, come to the table with something. You know how that goes. Now, my next question there is, can you think of any type of common myths most people have about qualifying for a mortgage that you'd like to debunk or set the record straight?
2 things kind of come to mind. One, that they have to have a large down payment, because a lot of people still think that even for a conventional loan that they have to put 20% down. For a first-time home buyer, they only have to put 3% down. FHA is 3.5% down, and USDA and VA is no down payment.
Oh, wow.
Another misconception is, I'm a first-time home buyer, so I automatically qualify for a grant. That's not the case. So a first-time home buyer is one of the criteria, right, for most of the grants, but the grant might have an income limit, the grant might have a credit score minimum, so there are other things that you have to qualify for. It's not just automatic, I'm a first-time home buyer, I'm going to get all this money.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, and I'm glad you set the record straight. Definitely have come across a lot who felt that way. And it's a good setting the record straight. So now, in regards to your process, where does realtors come in at? And briefly, what's their part in ensuring a smooth process for the first-time home buyers and sellers?
Well, I would say number one, they make sure that they have a good lending partner like me, right? Well, because the realtors, a lot of the times, the clients are introduced to the realtor first, right? They see the realtor on Instagram, or maybe somebody else used that realtor in the past. So the clients normally go to the realtors first, right? And they're relying on that realtor to kind of guide them throughout the process, including pairing them with a good loan officer. So it's very important that they have good loan officers that they're connected with, because if they recommend somebody, you know, that isn't great, you know, like at the time, I didn't, you know, the person who inspired me, like I didn't recommend that person, but they chose to work with that person. But as the realtor, it's like, you know, you tell them, hey, you know what, you should probably work with so-and-so. You know what I mean? Like, because they help facilitate the whole entire process.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's pretty straightforward, set in stone. So it's safe to say that in regards to the first time home buyer, they usually come across the realtors first, and then
Right.
that's how you pair up and come in.
Mhm.
Now, as far as helping that realtor, and that's my next question. Now, what advice do you have for the first time home buyer navigating higher interest rates or tight housing markets?
Just buy the house. I mean, no, seriously, because what are you going to do? Because if you wait, right, the home prices are going to shoot up. Because as soon as interest rates go down, well, regardless, home prices are continuing to appreciate, right? And as interest rates go down, there's going to be more buyers that are going to come on the market, which drives up prices even more.
And that is supply and demand.
Right. So if you sit here and wait for interest rates, you're going to put yourself in probably a worse situation. So my advice is to, stay within your budget, whatever your pre-approval is, because your pre-approval is based on whatever the interest rate is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just be mindful that home prices are higher than what they were back in 2020. A lot of people are stuck on lower home prices, lower interest rates. So they're expecting like these smaller monthly payments when that's not the case right now. But they're only going to get worse.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And because you have that whole supply and demand aspect, and it's very important. It's how society pretty much is ran today, to be completely honest with you, as far as capitalism goes. Now, any final tips for the listeners just getting started in the real estate or preparing for their first loan application?
I would say number one is just have a conversation. Everything is individual. Like there's no one size fits all. So don't be afraid to just reach out to somebody, whoever you feel comfortable with, who is a professional in the field, whether it be you're talking to a loan officer or you're talking to a realtor, and just getting that advice on your personal circumstance and see where that'll take you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that leads me into the next question. So what should realtors look for in a great loan officer partner?
Someone who's very knowledgeable, like myself.
I can agree. I give her that firsthand. I can agree with that.
And someone that you can communicate with, right? Mm-hmm. Because all the realtors that I work with, they know that they can call me 7 days a week, even if it's the most random question they just thought of. You know what I mean? Like you can call me, ask me anything, even if it's not for a particular person that we're working with at the time. I think that's the major key. And then someone who has certain products that are available to help with their clients as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how can realtors better educate their clients about financing to make deals move faster?
I say the biggest thing is prepare them to spend a little bit of money, because right now there's lots of things being thrown out there on social media. Oh, someone got a check back. My clients get checks back at closing too, but you get a check back because you spent some money. You're getting a check back from the deposit that you put down, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to have the money to begin with. So that's one of the things that I would say is just prepare people, let them know that yes, even if you end up at the table with nothing or you get a check back, that you still have to have money to start with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And as we wrap towards the end and conclude, just a few more questions I'm going to run through, and we can get you out of here. And again, I do appreciate stopping by the Lofty Beginnings. Let's give her another hand of applause. So what's one mistake buyers or even realtors make in the loan process? How can it be avoided?
For a buyer, I think most mistakes is just having changes after they got pre-approved, right? So the big thing is like sometimes they'll purchase a car, let's say for example, right? After they got pre-approved, that greatly affects your debt to income ratio. So changing jobs, so things like that, just making any changes to what we already knew when we pre-approved you before you actually close on your loan. Like anything like that, you have to make sure that you let us know or ask us before you do it, like, how is this going to impact my pre-approval?
Okay, so you definitely, so for that first time home buyer, it is very essential for the home buyer to communicate with that loan officer what's going on as far as applying for anything new,
right?
Any new debts or anything like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. My next question: what's the most rewarding part of being a loan officer?
Closing day.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Well, no, not for me. No, honestly, no, it's really just like the joy. No, seriously, it is such a wonderful, like, rewarding feeling at the end of the day. It's like, yes, I helped this person buy a home. A lot of people come to me and they don't think they can do it. So when they get there at closing day, it's really like the best feeling ever. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I love closing day.
That is deep. That actually just again brought the chills down again, because I can definitely see that happen with a lot of people. Because when you look in as far as the collective, and I'm not going to get too much off topic because we're in a time crunch here, a lot of people are ignorant of the fact that loan officers actually do exist and play a huge part and walking you through along that journey. Most people, when it comes to that first time home buyer, initially feel that they're, you know what I mean, overwhelmed and things of that nature when you guys have them each step along the way. And I can imagine what that feels like of getting them through that journey, and you played a huge part in doing that. Now, what's one piece of advice that you would give to the listener who's new to the real estate journey, rather that's purchasing their home for the first time or even stepping into the career of a loan officer or realtor?
Can I say just do it again? Just do it. Yeah, I mean, like, don't be afraid, right? Like, you know, life is very short. I know it's so cliche, but like, life is very short, right? So just do the things that you feel like you want to do. Like, you can do it. You can do it. Just do it.
You hear that, listener?
Yes.
You can do it. And I mean that, pun intended. You can do it. Now, lastly, before we let you go today,
this is the lastly.
This is the last question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because I could go off and on, but this is the last question, unfortunately. I wish we could keep you longer, but we're on the time crunch. Time is money, right? I beg to differ. But what do you offer to assist our listeners today who are looking to purchase their first home and are clueless about the whole process or even how it works? How can they reach you? What are your social platforms and consulting links?
I don't know the exact, like calendly.com/getloanswithsuz. That's SUZ. That's where you can set up a consultation. It's free. We could just talk about where you are in the process, the steps that it takes for you to get to the pre-approval. And then also, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I do tend to post a lot of educational videos from time to time. So you can always follow me there. It's also Get Loans with Suze as well.
Oh, okay. And so that's Facebook and Instagram covered.
Yeah.
And again, Susan, I definitely want to thank you for having us here today. You've just in a short period of time blessed us with so much knowledge today, and I'm quite sure my listeners are grateful, because I know I am, and I talked about you so much, and I finally manifested and got you in here, and I truly do appreciate it. And again, you guys, I just want to give her a clap. But we are at time, so I'm going to end it out with this. Thanks for tuning in to Lofty Beginnings, starting in real estate, here with Journey. Be safe, be smart, be blessed, and be a shining star at everything that you do. So guys, if you have not already done so, you definitely want to get your free ebook, The Top 8 Real Estate Careers Unveiled. You want to head over to loftybeginnings.org. And again, that's loftybeginnings.org. L is in Larry, O is in Oscar, F is in Frank, T is in Tom, Y is in Yellow, B is in Bravo, E is in Echo, G is in Gary, I is in Irene, N is in Nancy, N is in Nancy, G is in Gary, S is in Sally.org. Again, that's loftybeginnings.org. You want to go ahead and click the download now button and put your email, and that's a free ebook for a limited time. Top 8 real estate careers unveiled. And see.